Hi everyone, and welcome to the Spirited Awards Roundtable discussion presented by Pernod Ricard. My name's Holly Graham. I'm the managing editor of Drink Magazine Asia and a committee member for the Spirited Awards, and I'm extremely honoured to be moderating this panel. Thanks to all our speakers from all around the globe. We've a myriad of time differences here, so thank you everyone, no matter what time it is. It's obviously very early here, as you can probably tell by my voice. The Spirited Awards Committee this year gathered virtually online over the last few months to identify key themes and voices over the last year that have driven our industry and defined actions in the pandemic. One of these themes was industry advocacy, which is the foundation of growth of our culture and community the world over. I'm joined here with some of the industry's biggest advocates who are responsible for creating equitable and inclusive spaces, sustainable lifestyles, and have changed government policies and more. They'll be sharing their incredible work and journeys with us. I'll let the panelists introduce themselves, so please let us know your name, company, and where you're based. We'll kick off with Deano.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Deano Moncrieffe, and I'm in London. I'm the founder of an organisation, independent platform called Equal Measures UK.
Thanks, Deano. Over to Claudia.
Hi, really amazing to be here with you guys. My name is Claudia Cabrera. I'm the bar manager at Caito del Valle in Mexico City, and also the brand ambassador for Fratelli Branca in Mexico.
Thanks, Claudia. Peter?
Hey, what's happening, good people? How you doing? I'm Peter, the gentleman Lebese, originally from South Africa, but yeah, just recently moved to Dubai. All about giving smiles and a good time, and you know what it is, have a good time, happy days.
Love that. Over to Julia.
Hi, my name is Julia Momosé. I run a bar called Kumiko in Chicago, and I founded a group called Cocktails for Hope.
And Kelsey?
Hi everyone, I'm Kelsey Westbrook. I'm the Beverage and Events Director at Nore Bar in Louisville, Kentucky, bourbon capital, USA.
And Jeannie?
Hi everyone, my name is Jeannie. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Executive Director of Seattle Restaurants United. I'm based on occupied Duwamish territory in Seattle, Washington. I'm also the National Director for Ray's High Road Restaurants. It's nice to be here.
And last, but by no means least, Mr. Justin.
Hi, I'm Justin Tisdall. I'm out of Vancouver right now, where it seems to be pouring rain, so winter's here. I own a place called the Chickadee Room, Juke Fried Chicken, and Beef Box, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. So I'm going to open up with a question that I want everyone to address as concisely and succinctly as possible, as difficult as that might be, because it's such a vast topic that we're dealing with. But if you could summarize what advocacy means to you, what does advocacy mean to you? Again, we'll start off with Deano.
No pressure. broad topic. I mean, you know what, it means a lot of things to a lot of people. For me, it means advocacy is making sure that everyone has a voice, and making sure that you're a leader in helping to make sure that everyone has a voice. What we do here in the UK is, you know, we drive advocacy through through kind of equalising projects. But I guess the main thing for me is making sure that everyone has a safe place as well. Okay, you know, I think it's really important that everyone has a safe place where they can communicate, where they feel like they are open to be themselves. And my ambition and my goal has always been to make sure that whatever I do, I'm always helping others to fulfill their true potential. So that's what advocacy means for me. You know, and that can come in various different ways, for education, for mentorship. But yeah, that's what it means to me.
Thank you. Claudia, how about you?
Thank you. Well, for me, I think it's like supporting everyone who wants to grow in the industry, like make a difference, support and calling for new ideas and better programs that will help our industry grow together. I already made a summary.
Love it. Thank you. And Peter, how about yourself? I think we've got an audio problem. Peter, we'll come back to you. Let's move on to Julia and then we'll come back to Peter.
You know, I really loved how you commented how advocacy involves helping people meet their full potential. I think that's such an incredible way to look at it. There's thinking about advocacy, it is so broad, right? But it's about bringing attention to things. And I think asking questions as well, asking why things are how they are, and then challenging that for the betterment of everyone in a way. So, sometimes it's building on what already exists. Other times it's abolishing the entire thing and just starting over completely. I think it's a little bit different for everyone and for every situation as well. So being sensitive to that is really important in advocacy work. Thank you.
Thanks, Julia. Kelsey, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I think advocacy starts with acknowledging the privileges that you are allotted, coming to the table from an intersectional perspective and bringing all of your intersectionalities. For me, that includes my whiteness, my queerness, that I'm cisgendered, and acknowledging the privileges that those things are affording me, and then being committed to uplifting the voices of those that don't have those privileges.
And Jeannie?
I'm so excited, y'all. Like everyone's answers, I'm like, yes, what you said. Yes, what you said. So thank you for being in this space and for doing all the good work that you're doing in your respective communities. I think when I think about advocacy, I think a lot about just showing up for our community, right? And that community can look differently depending on where you are, who you are, like Kelsey said, but ultimately it's about trying to understand where people are and helping people make decisions to understand what the impact that they have on the world. And that can be like talking to legislators and the impact that they can have in representing our community in that way. Or that can also just be like talking to your friends and saying something like, that doesn't feel right to me. And like, we need to address how maybe we can fix that together. So to me, it's about just really being in community every day.
Thanks, Jeannie. And Justin, how about yourself?
Advocacy means a lot. I'm in like a young city, very diverse city. So a lot of it is, really macro conversations, like just in your community, or larger scale conversations, trying to talk to, some politicians in power. But I also find a lot of it is support through awareness and just through listening. What do people need? How can you help them get to that potential that they're trying to reach? How can you kind of uplift everybody to where it needs to go?
Thank you. And let's go back to Peter. How's your audio going there?
Happy days, happy days. Like what everyone's saying is top. It's just literally what it is. But then I also feel like it's like for me coming from South Africa and also finding myself in Dubai is like just finding a way to open up and give everyone like that pedestal that they need to be on, but then also just guiding them to find like the correct pedestal and the correct path throughout the industry, but also finding that like it's not just industry community thing as hospitality, but it's also there's a lot of like the creative around us that actually makes us who we can be and allow us to open up to find our fuller potential. So yeah, that's what I find that advocacy is.
Thanks, everyone. Amazing answers there. And I've been scribbling notes of things that I want to come back to afterwards. So, but what I would like to do now is for each other and our audience to get to know what you do and the things that you've been responsible for, because you've all done some incredible work. So once again, I'm going to go around and call everyone out, and we'll kick off with Mr. Deano. Sorry, pressure's always on you.
I love it. It's great.
I would love to know more about equal measures and how you advocate for diversity in UK hospitality, because you guys have done some amazing work.
Sure. I've got to be really concise because I know that I can talk quite a lot about this, and as I'm sure we can all do. It's such an important topic that we're talking about today, and I'm going to try and be really succinct with my answer. But so Equal Measures was launched and founded last year to simply raise awareness around the importance of diversity and inclusion in the hospitality industry within the UK. I think at the heart of my motivation is something that had been the genesis of Equal Measures, had been with me for quite some time, but I never had the time, the headspace to be able to really give it everything that it deserved, the time that it deserved. My working situation changed, and I was able to really focus on it quite, as more or less full time. And so what I did was I created a platform which was based around, as I say, raising awareness around the importance of equality on many different levels, and diversity and inclusion. And through that, I wanted to really educate people. So I set up an education and mentorship program with my good friend Hannah Lamphere from the mixing class, and we basically have an ambition to educate 120 students per year. And what we will do for those guys is we will give them a WSET level 2 certification and level 3 certification, a personal license certification as well, and any other courses that become available, whether it's beer, wines, and any other spirits, to really help push them to the maximum, because there is a glass ceiling here. And my main feeling was like, there's a big issue in the UK at the moment with, I guess, senior positions being held by people that are just, different to everyone else. At the moment, it's like it's very, very much like sort of white middle class men, and I want to readdress that by helping people to, as I said earlier on, to fulfill their true potential. And to give education makes a big part of that. So we also have a community outreach project. I know I've probably been talking too long, so I'm going to try and do this in that 30 seconds. We have a community outreach project. I've got a venue which is opening in 2 weeks' time, which is called Atcha Agavaria. And what we will be doing there is closing to the general public 1 day a week, and then opening up to the community. And on that day, we're going to have what's called Community Day every Monday, where people can come in and they will have a range of community aspects that they can learn and grow from, whether that's cooking masterclasses, whether it's mentorship sessions, work experience, live coaching sessions, supporting underrepresented businesses. That's what we're going to do 1 day a week. Every day that I own that bar, we will make sure that we do that. So that's my big commitment. So that's what we do at Equal Measures. Sorry if I went a little bit over, but it's kind of hard to condense it all in.
You were great, Deano. You were very succinct, but you also brought up something there which I definitely want to revisit, about having the time and headspace to do things. So bear that in mind, because that's something I want to revisit later. Whoops, just muted myself then. Over to Claudia. Tell us more about what you and your bar and team are doing, as I know you're tackling gender equality issues. And what's the, like I mentioned earlier, we're obviously from all different parts of the world. And I'd like to sort of know the state of affairs in Mexico City. And like I said, you've been tackling gender equality issues. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Thanks. Well, we started being the first all-female bar in LATAM, I think since 2016. So we were trying to make a safe space for girls to help them grow in the industry, develop their abilities in Gaito, so in competitions, and as well as having a bar program that will help them to develop their personality and become part of this industry in competitions, bar events. And also for us was important to make our female customers to feel more safe in a bar, since we have a lot of issues going on around, Mexico with the safety. And I'm pretty sure we triggered this bar program all over Mexico. Back in the day, it was really hard to see all these girls working in bars. And nowadays we have all these female programs running all over Mexico, which makes me really happy to see, since previously it was much harder for females to grow and reach their potential. So, I mean, we're just starting to make all this work all together, but now whenever you come to Mexico and visit us, you'll see a lot of girls working in bars right now. So that's pretty exciting.
Amazing, thank you so much. So Peter, you're an advocate for mental health. So I'd love to know more about some of the work you've done, and especially, you know, as much as we have flogged the pandemic horse, I think that talking to mental health, especially during the pandemic, you know, what changes you've seen before and then during on mental health and hospitality.
Yeah, so like for me, like also like I'm like still like really young. I find like in the industry, like I've been in the industry for a while, but I find like professionally I just came in as a young one, and within my community I find that there's a lot of people that I looked up to, but then I found that like I just needed to work on a certain difference, whereas like a lot of us we want to do the old school way of how hospitality is, and we like followed literally what our mentors were doing, whereas like I wanted to like bring in a different sense of like, look guys, like obviously our mentors, they grew up in a time and they were in a time where the guest is always right, and the guest is always right, but then also how do we get our time where like, you know, we give ourselves that minute or that 2 minutes to, you know, like step back, breathe, and actually just think of like, you know, why am I sad today, and why do I feel scared to actually talk about the fact that I'm sad, or why do I come to work and I just bottle all my emotions and I can't talk with the people around me. So what I actually did is I just I worked on like a program where it was just how do we talk about shapes, and like unmatching the different shapes that we have, like, and each shape has like a different emotion, and how do we layer these shapes to actually understand what our emotions are and how to actually unpack those. So it was something that was coming along well back home, but then now that I've moved to Dubai, it's a little bit more tricky to like work with stuff with mental health here. So I'm still like learning how do I actually get into the correct avenues to work with people on like mental health issues here. But the nice thing back home is that like we were in a pandemic, and I just then started taking over where I was just doing live Instagram interviews with a lot of friends who were either in the industry and people that weren't in the industry, and we're just doing a really really lovely but easy like chat with other people on like, how is it like that, okay, you're a musician or you're an artist or you're a designer, but like what is like the mental that you actually come into, and that opens up the creativity, but also makes you loosen up to also have your time to actually like, you know, allow yourself to be like, hey, I need that 2 hours in a day that's just for me, and I don't feel guilty for having my 2 hours, because when you're in a creative space, you always feel that you always have to please everyone else and you forget about yourself. So yeah, that's what we were playing on, and it's good times and it's a smile, and I just try keep pushing it, and that's what I do with like my social media and with those that are around me. Happy days.
I love that happy days attitude. It's making me smile this early in the morning. Over to Julia. You've done incredible things also, as is everyone here. One thing, and please don't feel limited to talk to this, you know, talk to what you do, but I definitely want to hear more about, you were instrumental in legalizing to-go cocktails in Chicago during the pandemic. So please tell us more about what you do and about that as well.
Sure. So in Illinois, bars and restaurants were all shut down for indoor service in the middle of March. And at the time, they were advising us that it was going to be a couple of weeks. And gradually, I got the sense that it was going to be a lot longer. And speaking with friends in Asia, I was pretty certain that it was going to be a lot longer. And so I started looking into ways to be able to continue to pay rent and to keep our staff on health insurance, because we had to furlough everyone. And it was one of the most devastating days, I think, was letting people know that, you know, we had to close for a while, and that uncertainty and not knowing if we were going to be able to reopen or bring everyone back. And so I just started to try to find ways to keep things going. And the state, or the governor, put out an executive order to allow bars with on-premise licenses to sell packaged goods. So essentially we were allowed to sell bottles of wine, bottles of whiskey, bottles of sake. But when I looked into a little bit further, they were very clear that we could not sell cocktails. We could not sell anything pre-mixed. Essentially, if you open a bottle, the manufacturer's label is torn, you can't put it in a new bottle and sell it. And so I started to reach out to see if there was a way to change this, if anyone else was doing anything. So I was on Facebook, all of the industry groups, and the restaurateurs, chefs kind of put together an email chain in Chicago. So I emailed that group to see what people thought, and a liquor attorney in the area reached out to me and said, this is something that I believe in, this is something that we should change. And next thing you know, we're founding an organization called Cocktails for Hope, set up a petition on change.org, and started messaging the governor's office, the mayor's office, alder people, the state representatives and senators, and just everyone we could, to put this on their radar, that this was something that was really important. And it took about 3 months or so, but we were able to change the law, at least temporarily, to allow bars and restaurants to sell their cocktails to go. And it kept my bar going, and I've been told from others that it kept their bars going as well. And we were able to hire back some of our staff and build out around a to-go cocktail program. And it was never something that I saw myself doing. And it was something, the result of the pandemic and everything shutting down, where I actually found myself busier than ever learning the system and trying to make this change. So yeah, that is Cocktails for Hope.
Thank you. Yeah, I think amen to that. I think the pandemic was weirdly some of the busiest times for people because, you know, we had to change so much. So Kelsey, over to you. I want to come back to and elaborate on my initial question. You know, when you talked about what advocacy means for you, you talked about, you know, using the privileges allotted to you to lift up others. And Nore Bar is known for being a very inclusive space. So A, how have you developed that culture? And B, how have you used your privileges for the, you know, for good?
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And I think, you know, it's most important to hear from Black and Brown people that they believe that our space is inclusive. So I'm really honored to be here and to learn from everyone in this room. But, you know, we started out in a really interesting space because our bar was under construction for almost 2 years, and we were set to open towards the end of February in 2020. And we actually ended up getting our state liquor license on March 16th, 2020, which was, as Julia mentioned, the same exact day as the bar and restaurant, or governor announced the exact hour that all bars and restaurants were going to shut down. You know, we were told it was a few weeks, but I think, as you mentioned, a lot of us knew that it wasn't going to be a few weeks. So we had just trained up our entire staff. We had ordered all of our product. We were ready to go. So we weren't able to open that week, which was really unfortunate, but of course we understood for health and safety issues. So March 16th was also 3 days after Breonna Taylor was murdered in our city. So, you know, later the murder of George Floyd happened, but we were essentially ground zero for the racial and social uprising in our community because we're located in downtown Louisville. And, you know, Louisville, as many other cities across the globe, was, you know, having this uprising for hundreds and hundreds of days. And, you know, we sort of had, we had the option of shutting off all our lights and just, we weren't able to operate as a bar, of course, but we could kind of go mothball status and just shut everything off and sort of see where the pandemic took us and not utilize our space, or we could open up our space to be a community safe haven for protesters. So that's what we decided to do. And it was very intense, but I think it built a lot of trust within our community off the bat because people were being tear gassed, arrested, manhandled directly in the street right in front of our bar. Apologies, my dog is sequestered in the next room and she is not happy. So, you know, people were able to come into our bar. They were able to get medical treatment from protester medics. They were able to get mental health support from an organization called Therapists for Protesters Wellness, which ended up setting up in our bar. And then, I'm so sorry, there's probably somebody walking down my street right now. And, you know, we were just kind of able to utilize our space to become part of the movement for Black lives in our community. And so, you know, we kind of started using our space again as a direct action training. So we had a lot of organizers in our community that we offered it up to use. A lot of Black femmes on our communities were training folks for direct actions, and we ended up kind of being ground zero for an action called Occupy Nulu. So we're in kind of a very trendy area, and it's a lot of white-owned businesses, and it's a lot of wealthy folks that have kind of come into this area but don't really live in the community and don't really give back. So part of the Occupy Nulu, which is the neighborhood, part of that was to administer demands to all the businesses in this community to have 23% Black and brown staff, because Louisville has 23% Black population, to have 23% of your stock on your bar be BIPOC owned products, and to have to abide by various requirements to attend diversity and inclusion trainings. There were also, I think there was like 16 demands. So we were able to kind of be involved with that and work with some Black and brown organizers in our community to be sort of ground zero for that protest. And then beyond that, as far as inclusivity goes, sorry, I know I'm trying to wrap this up. My dog was distracting me a lot. I think that you have to be a space where Black, brown, queer, trans, and non-binary folks want to work for them to want to come and spend time with you at your establishment. So I think it comes down to hiring practices as well. And then also for me personally, I have a very close relationship to our criminal justice system, coming from a family that has really close ties to incarceration. I grew up with an incarcerated father, and my brother is currently incarcerated for 27 years for nonviolent drug charges. So it's very, very important to me to be able to hire folks with criminal backgrounds. So we were able to get looped into an organization called Second Chances that comes from Goodwill Industries that links formerly incarcerated folks with job opportunities as well.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. I think you should just get your dog on the screen. We could all do some puppy love. So Jeannie, over to you. I kind of want, the same way that Kelsey, like, want to revisit something that you said, and it's so just succinct and perfect. That was showing up for your community. So to elaborate on my initial question, I guess, is how, and I know you have in so many ways, but how have you showed up for your community? And one amazing thing you did as well was founding Seattle Restaurants United to make legislative, can't even say that word, make changes during the pandemic. I always trip on that one. So yeah, please tell me more about that and how you've shown up for your community.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think I could say legislative at 5:30 in the morning either, if that makes you feel any better. But and Kelsey, like, I want to connect with you. I want to see what that letter is. That sounds amazing. The 23%. I love that as a starting point. And so showing up for community. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's actually kind of at the root of how Seattle Restaurants United started. You know, I was, like other folks on this call, like, impacted by the pandemic. I was the director of operations and community engagements for Sea Creature, which is Renee Erickson's restaurant group. We had 20 properties prior to the pandemic, and I was the first person laid off because we really saw clearly the writing on the walls of what was about to happen. And as a restaurant person, I couldn't just stand aside and watch what was happening and knew what was going to happen to our community and see what was would we be thought of, and what have you. So as a restaurant worker, I wrote a letter to my representatives and I posted on Facebook, and I said, anybody, please feel free to copy and paste, but I strongly encourage you to do something. And this is, one first step that we all can take. And it got just like a lot of traction. And a couple of my friends reached out to me, Ash Stockholm, who used to be the chef de cuisine at the Whale Winds. She was also laid off. I mean, they laid off to so many people that day. And then my friend Melissa Miranda from Musong, they both reached out to me and said, you know, restaurant owners are organizing around the country and we really need to do something. And so we did. So that was on a Friday, and Melissa was trying to save a restaurant. So she said, you should reach out to my friend Francesca Songhang, who is a social media person. And we organized over the weekend. And by Monday, we had over 100 restaurants. And I had a list of demands, and we sent that to kind of the city, state, and federal level. And then by Wednesday, we had over 200 restaurants sign up to be a part of Seattle Restaurants United, and over 10,000 signatures on our change.org petition. And I don't say that to just kind of like give numbers and be like, wow, like we did a lot of work in a couple of days, but that I think that just really shows the strength of our community and the power that we have when we organize that power and organize our voices. Since that time to now, we've helped do a lot of legislatively at the local level. We helped cap delivery fees. We got free outdoor street permitting for our restaurants. We actually gave some input on some progressive tax structuring in the city, which I thought was really interesting to be a part of. And then right now, actually, we're working with the county on mandating vaccinations for indoor dining. So it's been amazing. At the national level, I sat on the advisory board for the Independent Restaurant Coalition. I was the co-chair of the policy committee. And our committee, led by me and Michael Shemtoff, were the ones that kind of put together the original structure for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. We got $28.6 billion in that earlier this year, and we're working on replenishing that. And then, I don't know, it's just like talking about, you know, how we show up for community. The last thing I'll mention is my actual paid work. So all of that's volunteer. We're a grassroots organization. Everyone's been donating a lot of time and energy. But my paid work is I'm the director for Raise High Road Restaurants, and we're a national network of restaurant owners and operators around the country that prioritize race and gender equity in the restaurant sector with a specific focus on improved working conditions for our employees. And the main policy work that we work on is eliminating the sub-minimum wage for tipped workers. So for that, since a global call, I'll let you know really quickly what that is. It's in the United States and 43 states in the country, if you pay, if your workers receive $30 or $30 in tips or more a month, then the employers can pay them a sub-minimum wage as low as $2.13 nationally. It's a legacy of slavery after folks were, free, after enslaved people were freed. Restaurant owners, instead of paying them a full wage, said, well, you can work for tips. And what research has found is actually in some cases, restaurants said, you can pay me to work here so you can work for tips. And we've gone from that $0 then to $2.13 now. And as you can imagine, this still really deeply impacts people of color, particularly women of color. And so that's why we're working on that issue to abolish the sub-minimum wage. And it also just mentioned is also a gender issue, because our industry has the highest rates of sexual harassment of any other sector in the country. And Catherine McKinnon, who's the woman that coined the term sexual harassment, she's come out with research that says that eliminating the sub-minimum wage is the most effective policy to reduce sexual harassment in our country, including making sexual harassment illegal. And we know this because research has shown in the 7 states that require you to pay a full minimum wage, sexual harassment reports or claims are reduced by 50%. It's literally cut in half. So sometimes showing up for your community is easier said than done, but like I'm really proud of the work that we've all been able to do in the last year. And it's been pretty exciting, although arduous at times. So yeah, I think that's all.
Awesome, thanks, Jeannie. Some really eye-opening statistics there as well. So again, last but not least, over to Justin. So you've long been, as I understand, an advocate for diversity and sort of set up like hiring processes to make sure that, you know, that you have equal workspace. So tell us more about that hiring process and how you've implemented change in the work that you've been doing.
First off, commend and kudos to all of you for all the actions you've taken throughout your careers, throughout the past year and a half. Inspiring to hear. on my end, Vancouver's a bit of a different city. So we basically got our cocktail bar and restaurants in the lowest income, highest drug addicted area in North America, or not lowest income in North America, but highest drug addicted area in North America. And then our other restaurant we have is in like the LGBTQ area of town. So we've really wanted to, well, me and my business partner, without even really saying anything to each other, have always wanted equality within the business. I have, right now during the hiring process, it's a little bit different because the whole world seems to be short-staffed with any kind of restaurant position you need. But we always, from the day one, like paid above minimum wage, always provided benefits for our team, and want to make sure that you feel supported, and we are very aware and educated on whatever your life situation is, depending on if you're a person of color, if you're BIPOC, if you're LGBTQIA. We want to make sure that the place is safe and inclusive for you. So our hiring practices have been, I'd say, different than most because I guess being a person of color, I have a different perspective than, say, most of the people in Vancouver who are probably Caucasian white men. So being a person of color, I never saw myself represented in the industry very well. So I really try to push for diversity in our workplace. I try to make sure that our kitchens are that way as well, especially most kitchens, most staff are underpaid, not treated very fairly. So whenever anyone starts with us, they know that they're going to work an 8-hour day. They know that they're going to get benefits. They're going to get probably above average pay, and they all get tips. So that's one thing we never compromise on. And that started in every aspect of our business. Like diversity, education, and awareness has always been one thing. You know, we're an eco-green business. We've tried to make decisions that we feel are better for our city than when we got here. Meaning, our joke is, it's like, just hire good humans, because we want a bunch of people around us that all want to speak the same language and affect the same change down the road. And we know we're just 1, 2, 3 restaurants, but we're trying to unite other restaurants in our city. And we're putting ourselves forward as business owners. So I'd never really, people knew, you know, my story a little bit when I was starting out as an entrepreneur in restaurants. I'd been in restaurants for 15, 20 years before that. But I never, until the pandemic, really put my, you know, my blackness, my biracialness forward. And I think once the George Floyd situation happened and I was holding my 3-month-old daughter, I knew that I needed to change my approach to actually be more vocal, so people in this restaurant industry that may not be safe would have a safe space to come work. So we've highlighted other businesses that are underrepresented. We've made sure we've worked with local and international charities throughout the pandemic, and I think people have joined our company because of our policies.
Awesome, thank you, Justin. I love that about like heeding the call as well. You know, that sort of trigger to be like, I need to use my voice and, you know, do work for the greater good. So I've been thinking about this. I had one question, but I think we can split it possibly into two. So something, you know, obviously is a big subject that's come up here is racial equity. And something that I want to, this is a very open question, so please feel free to jump in. I'm not going to call on people from now on. This is now an open forum. So a question that I want to address to all of you is, do you all feel that it's everyone's responsibility to advocate for racial equity in our industry? I don't know who wants to kick off with that. Don't all drop at once.
Yeah, so like a big thing for me is like I feel like now just getting to Dubai, like you see it a lot. Like it's a thing where like out here, everyone that's getting hired, you're getting hired because you have to be Western. Like literally everyone that sends out a resume, or when everyone that sends out a job description, the first thing is you Western. And you're finding that there's scales of where you can actually work. So like, I'm really lucky that like I got here and like I'm a beverage assistant manager of a venue, but then even while I'm hiring, like, you know, the people that I'm working with or the other venues, they're like, okay, Filipinos can only be at this, they can't be bartenders, or Filipinos, they can only be scholars or they can be barbacks. So to me, like, it's a big thing, because I'm like, there's some people who have been working in this industry or in their venues for 8 years, and they've seen 10, 15 managers go through there, and they haven't even been given a boost. So I find, like, for me, how do I now get into a city where I've only been here for 3 months, and how do I actually start advocating on, like, where is the equalness of us coming in as people in hospitality, and not even worrying about, okay, the venue owners, because obviously the venue owners, they have their own vision. They're more like in a tunnel vision. So how do we come together as a community forum and actually work that out and actually be like, guys, these standards are just not what this industry deserves and what this industry wants, because at the end of the day, my pigment or my skin pigment does not determine how good I can do a job. You know, like, at the end of the day, I can do the job just as great as someone next to me. The fact that they have lighter skin, or the fact that their teeth are, they had braces when they were young and I couldn't afford braces, does not mean that, hey, I can't do the job. So yeah, it's just, I feel that we do have to shout it out more. And it's a little bit sad that we still have to do that at this time, like in life. But then we just have to be those people which are like, you know what, like, one or two people might turn around and be like, point fingers back at us. But then as a whole, the more of us that can get together and actually go behind this thing as like, look, the racial thing should be equal. Like, let's not just say there's racial equality. Let's actually show that there is racial equality, and that'll just allow the industry to actually grow, and actually allow the industry to be more diverse within, like, the cultures that are there to actually grow what the theme of the venue is, or what the direction of the venue is. Because at the moment, right now, it seems like it's just going on to one straight line, which is, okay, it just comes from the people from the UK are going to run this venue, or the people from Italy are going to run it. So this is the culture of it. But then we don't have like a diverse management team that can actually come in and say, well, you know what, when you have people from Africa coming in, or when you have like Black Americans coming in, or when you have like the Jamaicans coming in, how does this actually, like, you know, affect them when they're in your venues? So that there's more of a balance for not just the staff, but there's also a balance for our guests and the consumer that comes into our venue, and a better understanding for them. Happy days. That's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Peter. That's such an awful thing to hear. I actually was recently in Dubai. Sorry to have missed you when I was there, but yeah, it's a strange place, isn't it? When it comes to things like that, it's very not like the rest of the world. Let's put it that way. Would anyone else like to speak on that whilst we're here? I guess, okay, I'll flip the question to Claudia, you know, because you've advocated for gender equality. So do you feel that it's everyone's responsibility to advocate for gender equality as well in our industry?
Yeah, I mean, like, lately I've seen a lot of people I look up on. In Mexico, it's really hard. I mean, it's a man industry. It's always been like that. It's been like lately in the lately 10 years, it's been different, like 10, 12 years maybe. But I mean, you got to see like one girl in a bar, no bar managers, just barbacks, or like hostess, servers, kind of bar back there. And I mean, nowadays, most of the bar programs in the like hottest spots in Mexico are run by girls. So that's, I mean, we're all making this huge group and making a difference. But I mean, it's taking time, and it's still a struggle. So I mean, we all need to make our job there.
Can I
Thank you, Claudia. Please.
Sorry, just jump in very quickly. I think that there's the answer to the question is, from my point of view, is yes, that it's everyone's responsibility. But I think that the responsibility actually falls a little bit further away from just bar operators and bar owners. It's also our consumers as well. You know, everybody needs to be accountable for this. It's not something that we can do just on our own. So we need to make sure that the messaging that we're giving, make sure that we're inclusive enough to have the right customers within our venues as well, and they can help to spread the word as well, so they can play a part as well. I think that's really important.
That's a really good point, Deano. And actually, sorry, Jeannie, carry on. I don't want to interrupt you.
Oh no, please go ahead.
I was just going to ask Deano if you wouldn't mind elaborating, like how do we? That's always the tough one, because I think that whilst I don't want to generalize, I do think that our industry is making those leaps and bounds, you know, and there's a lot of camaraderie, but I do think that, like you said, a lot of the problem is with our guests and consumers. So how do we change their perspective and sort of get them on board as well?
I mean, I think you obviously, one of the first steps is to make sure that they feel comfortable within the environment that they're going into, so they can see people that reflect. The reason I started Equal Measures, as I mentioned before, is that I wanted to make sure that our industry was more reflective of the society that it serves. I don't think it is in the UK at the moment. You know, in London is a very big example of that. You know, the population is very diverse. There's hundreds of different languages being spoken. You can walk into a 5-star hotel and you won't see a person of color that is in a customer facing position. And that's wrong. And the way that people get around that is by saying, oh, we do have, you know, a percentage of our workforce is, you know, 70% of people of color, but where are they? You know, why can't we see what you're doing? So there are ways where big companies have got away with this for quite a long time. The big step has to be to make sure that, you know, any environment that we have is, and this is not just about, you know, color, it's about everything. It's you know, it's gender, it's everything. You know, I'm for equality on every level, right? That's my thing. I've been marginalized, and anyone who feels like they've been disadvantaged through their personal decisions that they've made in their life, I can relate to that. And I don't think, you know, I think that my mission is to make sure that, you know, my bar is reflective of that. 40% of my workforce are going to come from underprivileged backgrounds, and I'm working with charitable organizations to make sure that happens. So it's little steps like that will make a big difference, and make more people feel welcome when they walk through the door. You know, I've always said this from a work point of view, you know, you can't be what you can't see, right? So if you don't have the right people that you can look at, that you feel inspired by, you'll never progress. And it's the same in a bar environment. You need to feel comfortable enough when you walk through the door to know that, you know, there are people like you that are serving you.
Thanks, Deano. Jeannie, you had something.
Yeah, I was just going to add to kind of what Peter, but Deano kind of touched on it too, where, you know, you said, Holly, you said that, you know, it's really sad to hear that that's happening in Dubai with the Filipinx folks that are working there. And then I think Deano just touched on that as well, where it's just representation does matter. You know, it's just like, we can't just say that we have diverse work teams. We need to make sure that our restaurants and bars have mobility, you know, that we're making sure that all of our managers are trained to look at that. Like, it's fine if you want to, like, Kelsey, I love that, you know, working with the incarcerated and folks that are re-entering society. It's just like giving them that opportunity absolutely is wonderful, but that's not enough, right? Like, we can't just have them be our dishwashers. We have to make sure that there's a pathway that they can be the general managers. And what does that look like? And how are we battling that unconscious bias that we all carry? We all carry it, and we need to recognize it and call it out, because these things are going to continue to happen. You know, like I heard someone say, like, it's surprising that we have to keep talking about it, but the reason we have to keep talking about it is because we've never really truly spoken about it before. You know, we address a movement, the movement happens, we move on. And this moment, I think that what I'm excited about, and the people in this room, but especially and the people in our country and around the world, and the work that you all are doing, is that we are not going to let it move on. We are not done. We will not be done for a long time. And I'm excited for this potential that we have, because everything I'm hearing in this room are things that I think it's nice to hear that echoed back and be in that space. And I'm excited for Tales of the Cocktail to give us this opportunity to really have this conversation. So thank you to all of you.
Amazing. Thank you, Jeannie. Getting us all roused up. So you know, it's obvious that you guys all do incredible work, and something, so going back to, I think it was Deano said something that stood out to me, and it was, you know, you said you got to a point where you felt like you had the time and the headspace to do it. And, you know, sometimes, especially during the pandemic, you know, I know a lot of people sort of retreated within themselves, and a lot of us, including pretty much everyone in this room, heeded the call and, you know, used their voice. But it was difficult. And again, not just in the pandemic, and there is something to be said for finding that sort of click, that time, that headspace to be like, this is what I want to do. I'm going to use my voice. So I guess that leads me on to my question, which again is open to everyone. I'd love to hear from each of you. So, you know, you're all such pillars and strengths, you know, pillars of strength for so many people, but where do you get your energy, and where do you get your advice, and where do you draw strength from? Because it can be extremely draining, you know, as Jeannie said, like these conversations are ongoing, and sometimes it can be really, really draining and disheartening, you know, when things, you know, maybe it feels like we take one step forward and 2 steps back. So where do you guys draw your energy, your strength, your mentorship, your advice from? Please, Kelsey, thank you.
Yeah, for me, I think definitely advice. I seek that from Black femme organizers in my community. And I want to add that advice is never unpaid, because I think that's extremely important to compensate people for their time and energy as far as that goes. And the strength and inspiration, for me, I consider myself an abolitionist. So I spend a lot of time reading abolitionist writings, especially Mariame Kaba, who has written the book, We Do This Till We Free Us. And that is regarding abolitionist organizing and transformative justice. And I think that even in our industry, even though we live in a capitalist society and I operate a business and we have to try to sell things to people, that's the society that we're in. I do dream of abolition. And I think that we all succeed whenever we have access to the resources we need to survive. And that starts with advocating for things like Jeannie mentioned, a living wage, and just having access to those resources that we need. So that's definitely where I personally draw inspiration from and where I seek advice from.
Thank you, Kelsey. Anyone else would like to speak to that? I'm going to call on, I was going to call on you, Justin, so go for it.
That's okay. Yeah, I think during the pandemic, again, everyone was going through a multitude of things all at the same time. So my strength came from the fact that I've got 2 little kids at home, and we initially started by thinking the businesses are gone, like we're going to lose everything overnight. So what do we do now? And out of that, there was like a Black business kind of coalition that started. And I think a lot of those people, I didn't know exist, but a lot of the people who are a bit more senior than I have been a wealth of knowledge, and we keep working on little projects to move forward. I think family's been a bit of an inspiration, like my parents. I've got a different background, like I was adopted when I was young, so I think I really see the world in a bit of a different way than other people, and so like a Caucasian family. But I think like every time I, look at my kids or look at my staff, I'm like, we can't stop. Like there's way more to do right now. This is just the tip of the iceberg, as Jeannie said. It's like usually movement starts and then finishes, but these movements can't stop. And they're probably going to be going on for a long time, as long as people keep pushing that forward. And I think that's, it's tiring, but I think there's really no finish line. But as you hit kind of markers along the way, you can kind of, take a little breath and be like, oh, we did that. How do we do the next?
Thank you, Justin. Would anyone else like to speak to that before we move on?
Yeah, I'd like to just say, like, like for me, like, again, like, and I'm always going to raise this little thing where, like, I find that I was lucky within like my journey within the industry, whereas I've always had really good mentors around me. But within these mentors, like, I always like look back to how my mother like raised me. Like, she raised me to not be on a leash, but like just always go out and like make my own decisions, and like how should this actually be. Like, yes, my mentors have told me like, yeah, this is how you go about to build this career or to build this brand or to build this. But then how do I break that mold, and how do I actually like come out and actually do it a bit more differently, but also do it which in a sense that actually works for me, but also is true to myself. So I find that I get a lot of that strength from my mother, but then the energy that I pick up is from all the people around me, and like everyone that either like, you know, like tells me when they're having a bad day, and gives me that little bit of a boost of like how do I now when I go for a run think of like how do I actually like help them out, and do I actually have to talk to them, or do I just have to be there to listen to them or so the people around me. And I've been really lucky because from living in America and then being in South Africa, living back home, and then now being in Dubai, and like being in Dubai and being welcomed by a really, really beautiful like industry and like a really beautiful people, and having like people that I can actually say that I trust, and I can call on any time, and like I've only been here for such a short time. It just gives me more confidence, but also gives me more of like that type of view. I'm like, you know what, like no matter what it is, like if one or two people that here will tell me that, okay, how you're doing it is wrong, I still trust myself that like, you know what, it's wrong for you, but then the other people that are around me, they fine with it. And if I'm not hurting you, I'm sorry that I'm offending you, but then let's look at the end of it and let's see if the result comes out good for you and myself together. Because I can't, like, I know that sometimes you'll offend other people, but like also we learn to how do we apologize and how do we actually say that, okay, you're correct. And I just had to find out my way and with my beliefs and with my directions, and that's it.
Absolutely true, Peter. Sometimes those uncomfortable conversations have to happen, and often they lead to the greatest outcomes, I think. So, Deano, you got something to say?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that honestly, I do get strength from moments like this and speaking and meeting everyone in this room. It's so inspirational. Like honestly, I actually feel quite emotional in the fact that I'm just listening to everyone's stories, and it fills me with so much hope. Also fills me with a lot of energy to kind of, when you feel a little bit tired and you think, man, this is really hard, but you just hear what everyone is doing, and it's so motivating. And I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone, and obviously to Tails as well, because I feel energized, even though it's like 11:45 at night. I feel really energized. I'm like, I'm scribbling and making notes. So thank you all for sharing what you do.
And that's the greatest thing, right? If people can benefit from this, then amazing. And I'm hoping those that listen to the recording will. Sorry, Justin, did you want to say something?
Just kind of real quick to what Peter was saying was also, I think the energy comes from the fact probably a lot of us don't have mentors that we can align with, or mentors that we can see like ourselves in. So I think, like, as we just kind of said, these conversations make us realize we're not alone. There's people out there doing similar work, and then it like just pushes it, excites us that much more to keep going.
Yeah, 100%. Sometimes, not everyone has a mentor. It starts somewhere, right? So I think you guys are the founders. You're going to start a long line of mentorship, and that's super exciting, or already have. So I'm conscious of time, so I'd like to start wrapping up and give everyone a little opportunity to speak. Bit of a fluffy question, but I think it's interesting to sort of see, we've had such a strange year, 2 years, and I want to wrap up my last few questions and kind of make them into one. So the question was, how has the way you've advocated changed pre-pandemic, during, and after? And I guess that would lead me to sort of what your plans are in 2022. So I'm going to do the quick call around again in my order. So that's starting with you, Deano. So yeah, the question is, how were things, how are things, and what's the future?
I mean, I think that things were not in a good place in the UK. I think that things are still not in the shape that I'd like them to be in. But, as I said just a minute ago, I feel really motivated And just like Justin, actually, I have to say that my motivation was actually from having having my little boy, and I just looked at, it's one of those moments you look in his eyes and I was like, man, this needs to change. Like, this is not good. I can't have this situation for my boy that I had some terrible experiences and some really not pleasant scenarios happen to me in a working environment. And I was like, I can't let him go through the same experience. So sometimes the motivation comes from within and sometimes it's from outside influences. So I feel like, there has been progression, but not enough. There's a lot more conversations. What we need to see now is a lot more action from conversations. But like I said, my hopes are for next year that, the conversations that we continue to have and the communities that we continue to build, like today, maybe there'll just be one or two of us that connect in an amazing way that will actually make some positive change. Everything that we're doing is going to enforce positive change, but maybe some connections will be made that will make long-lasting change. That's all we can hope for, and I'm really confident that will happen.
Thank you, Deano. Claudia?
Yeah, everything changed big time. It's crazy times here, and I had to rely more in my team. We made a lot of changes. So everything is really different now. We used to be just a cocktail bar, upstairs this Japanese restaurant, and now we're no longer a cocktail bar. We had to make a fusion with the restaurant downstairs in order to, keep alive. And we now need to work with a lot of servers, make them fall in love with the industry. Also a lot more of staff training and a lot of teamwork. And I'm lucky to have this great bar team. They have been loyal through all the program while we adjust to creating an environment based on values and respect and working with all the staff from the restaurant, because we used to only have girls in our bar and now we're working with a lot of guys. So, it's different, but it's good. And at the end of the day, we all come from different backgrounds, different areas of hospitality. And so it was very important to unite as one team and share core values. And through it all, I think it was realizing that the most important thing in the industry is people, and that's what we all miss the most. And future goals, I think improving our bar programs so that every single staff member can grow with us. And I love finding and developing new talent. It doesn't matter the experience. We have created this bar team and program where everyone can learn and grow and will reach their potential. And who knows, maybe our new waiters from the restaurant will be up for it. And, helping bartenders to grow in the industry. Most of them want to become brand ambassadors or brand owners, or just having their own side projects. We all have different ambitions. We all have different passions. And here is my responsibility in this place to ensure that they reach their goals and just, keep satisfying our customers, make them feel like home, because we really miss them. It was that, right? Through pandemic, we could still make drinks and do seminars or whatever, but without all that people, we were just left there sad, alone.
Thanks, Claudia. Peter?
Yeah, happy days. So for me, it was really different because being back home, South Africa is really under a tough one. As America closed, we also closed. So we closed on the 15th of March, and that was my birthday too. So those things hit at the same time. So then I'm one person that's my emotion is very personal to me. So I don't really show my emotions out. Whereas I found myself in the pandemic that I had to now start revisiting and being true with my emotions and true with my mental self. And that's how all this actually started picking up more steam, I find. But then now with the opportunity for where I am, in Dubai now, I find that from shouting back home and being loud with giving the pedestal of you know what, we don't have to do it as the norm. We just have to find what our personality and what our personality is, and just find the pedestal that's meant for us. in this industry and in this path that we're going, so that we can all shout and all show ourselves as the creatives that we are, but also as the pillars of this community and the pillars of this family that we have built. So now, like my personal goals are to actually work on how do I now bring what I started back home here in Dubai, but also do it not disrespecting the cultures and the laws of the country, but also working on like how do I now do it in such a way that we don't offend, but then we actually just lift everyone up more, and we showcase those people which are not that don't normally have the spotlight and don't have that, I'd say like that strength or that fire to like activate their own spotlight. And I want to go there and I want to be the guy that's like, yeah, like I got a match for you and let's light it. And like you start lighting your fire and you start putting your fire out there, because there's too many people out here to not have that chance, or to not want to show their light within the industry. Because 80% of the time, or all the time, whenever you go for an interview, the first question they ask you is your personality, right? And I'm like, if you guys want our personality, how do we then, once we've hired you, how do we now burn your personality? So I want to make sure that people are confident in their personality and they're always pushing their personality, because that is what you 80% hired for, right? Your personality, what you can do afterwards. So bring your personality, bring your view, and just keep shining with it and just being an awesome human being. And yeah, like happy days. It's a good time. All love. Thank you for having me, guys. And it's so amazing meeting all you people. Like, yeah, I'm really glad. I'm really proud. And yeah, it's yeah, what the things that are gonna happen. Yeah, I'm just really amped to see more, and just to see us grow more and do more good things in this community and this industry. Happy days.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. And Julia, how about yourself?
I really like the question of, you know, how have I changed, how we changed pre-pandemic versus during the pandemic, and then what's next? You know, what are we doing now because of that? I am part Japanese, born and raised in Japan, and I grew up in a culture where you don't want to stick out. And I've always been the quieter one in the room, probably. And so when everything got shut down, up until then, I would say the way that I have run my business, the way that I have bartended has been very much within these four walls, behind this bar, like feeling very safe. And when that was all shut down and taken away, there was no longer a safe space where I could have my staff working. There was no longer a safe place for me to have our guests in enjoying our drinks. That was all gone. And then all that was there was this idea of, well, how do we survive? How do we bring that back one day? And so it just became this idea of, well, we just got to tear down those walls, have to reach out, have to find a way to reach these people again. And going into or exploring the legislative process and figuring out how it all works and how to make these changes was definitely one of the more difficult things that I've done, and speaking out and being very vocal about it was a really, really big challenge for me. So I hope that anyone who is listening to this and sees everyone here and all the incredible work that they're doing can see that, you know, change, while it can be really scary and intense, is I think what this world needs right now across the board. And sometimes it really does mean going out from behind your bar and going outside of those doors and finding ways to connect, whether in person or virtually like this. I think this is an incredible thing that we have gained from being shut down in a way, is that we've actually opened up so much more. And here I am sitting on this global panel with incredible people, and each of you are inspiring me so much. And I think, you know, in the last few weeks, I reopened our bar indoors here in Chicago, and that has taken so much energy, and I feel as though I've been focusing so much inward once again, but I really want to focus outward again. And so moving into 22, that's going to be my goal, to continue to ask those questions, to find ways to advocate and hopefully create some real change that doesn't just affect me and my close circle, but something that can help everyone around us at a much greater scale. So thank you all for sharing and for letting me get inspired by each of you, because this is really an incredible panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. And that's such an incredible point. It took a shutdown to open up, for everyone to open up and sort of get outside that box. Kelsey, I would love to hear from you.
Yeah, I think just speaking to what everyone else has said, the pandemic absolutely changed everything. And in a lot of ways, for me personally, it just made me even more radical in my views. And I think that, I have a friend, speaking to what you said, Julia, I have a friend that says, 2020 gave us 2020 vision on all these issues. And our industry is just, so many folks in our industry are a few weeks away from houselessness. And it really showcased that. And we had an incredible organization here in Louisville called the Lee Initiative, founded by Chef Edward Lee, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, providing meals for service industry folks and their families. And we had, cars lined up around the block of 610 Magnolia for hours. So while that is incredible and so commendable, and I love everything that the Lee Initiative does, we shouldn't have to be doing that. We should all have the resources we need to survive. So I think it should be, if anything, a renewed commitment to advocating for abolishing these systems that are keeping people poor, keeping people oppressed, and, finding a different way. Like, the system is working as it was designed to keep people down. So how can we advocate to change that? And so many of you are doing legislative work, which is where that begins in a lot of ways. So I think just being willing to continue fighting for that, even as we're not really coming out of the pandemic, we're still in it, of course, but even as we're just moving into a different phase of it. And then, for me also, just being willing to advocate for my staff, who's so amazing and so talented, and say their names in rooms that they're not in, I think is so important, and we should all be doing that as well. So I'll just echo what everyone else has said and say that I'm so honored to be here with all of you and learn from all of you. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Kelsey. And very good point. We're all very quick to say, oh, the pandemic's over, but it's definitely not. It's a new phase. So I think it's probably the better way to word it. And Jeannie, how about you?
I think I'll do a shameless plug right now. Goal for 2022 would be to abolish the subminimum wage. And so if anybody wants to help with that work, if you're in the United States, we'd love your help. You can visit us at highroadrestaurants.org. So that's a goal for Raise High Road Restaurants. For Seattle Restaurants United, one of the things that we're working on is we've put together kind of a worker community care collective. We're, kind of like Kelsey was mentioning earlier, like one of the models that we were looking towards is a restorative justice model, right? We know that we have grown up in toxic work cultures, grind culture, sexual harassment, white supremacy, low wages, racial injustice, all of that, right? And so like, that's where we've come from. And what does that do when you are, like a middle-aged person now that's come up in that and now are a leader now, and when you fall, when you have been doing the things that you were taught to do because that's how you were raised, and you now know that it's wrong, how do you rectify that, right? And so Seattle Restaurants United has been working with a bunch of workers to talk about, is there a path forward instead of, talking about cancel culture, like, which I do think is important and, has its place, yet it doesn't really bring systemic change, right? And so can we build some sort of restorative model where we bring the community together and have conversations and have true accountability? So that's like a super big goal for us at Seattle Restaurants United, and like to create a system where business owners and workers can come together and say, I have a grievance and like, I want to address that. And how do we build that together? And then, yeah, I think it's gonna be a lot. I was gonna name other goals, but that might just be enough for 1 year. I'm trying that, but continuing kind of all that race and gender equity work that we do with Raise, and yeah, just making sure there's representation and helping build resources for folks that are small business owners that really may not have the time, even though they have the desire. It's just like why we should have more transparency and more shared resources with each other so that we can all work together for a more equitable industry. So I also want to thank everyone for being here and grateful for all of you, and hope you don't mind. I am going to email some of you to connect and learn more about y'all. So thank you, and thanks, Holly.
Thanks, Jeannie. And there is absolutely nothing, there is no shame in a plug when it's for good work. So it's not a shameless plug, it's just a good old plug. And last but not least, again, Justin.
Yeah. I think as the world shut down, everyone had eyes on these major events that started to pop up. And as those quiet down a little bit, our restaurants, we're doing, some action within our community, trying to feed the BLM movement, trying to work with community leaders. And as those, there's not protests going on in Vancouver as much anymore. There are for different things. So it's how do we support the people that need it? We're a small independent business or two, and I think our big thing moving forward is the energy we put into the last kind of 18 months is like, how do we redirect that the next 18 months to continuously work on, hiring equality within our company and hopefully expands to our friends' restaurants and starts getting a little further along there. And also, how do we not silence these movements when there's no longer spotlights on them? And for us, on a really simple scale, it's not simple, but on a smaller scale, really focusing on our communities that our restaurants are in, because, they're low income, underrepresented people that need education. And I think our staff education as well, just awareness of what's going on within our community on a global scale. I really think we need to almost double down on that, continue with what our staff need and how we can help them get there.
Thank you so much. I think we are about here, time to wrap up. So I just want to say thank you so much to everyone. As you can probably see, the sun has now risen in Hong Kong. I've gone from dark to lost half of my face. So I think that's time to call it. I think it's been an incredible discussion. We could be here for hours. It's always a shame that we do have to limit these things, but I'm sure our watchers also have attention spans. But thank you so much, everyone, for your insights, and thank you for the work that you do, and for joining myself and Tails, whatever time in the world it is, whether that's bedtime, lunchtime. I'm about to have some breakfast. Thank you so much, and thank you so much to Panna, Ricard, and Tails for having us. And I really hope that we can all connect in real life soon. Like I said, was fortunate to see Mr. Deano a couple of weeks ago, but I haven't had the pleasure to meet the rest of you, and I really hope that happens soon. So thank you very much, everyone.